Every tailwheel pilot will do a ground loop, regardless of the experience, because a taildragger is unstable on the ground, so a taildragger can be quite a handful during the takeoff, during the landing, and even during the taxi. And this is due to the location of the center of gravity. The moment that it starts to turn, it will have a tendency to keep on turning, and it is your job as a pilot, as a tailwheel pilot, to stop this from happening. So you have to fly very precisely and you have to anticipate everything that the taildragger is going to do, because if you are 1 second too late with your correction, or your correction is too much or not enough, there is a possibility that you can lose control. And the airplane can do a ground loop. I haven't done a ground loop yet, but many years ago I almost did a ground loop. And this was all because I was becoming at ease with flying with taildraggers. I was becoming confident flying with taildraggers, and the moment that you start feeling at ease, the moment that you start feeling confident, this is the moment when everything is going to go wrong. This is just how the world works, especially in aviation. So during the takeoff I made a very stupid mistake. So the way that you take off with a taildragger is you go to full power and then you push the stick forward to push the nose down, but the moment that the nose is moving down due to gyroscopic forces of your spinning propeller, your airplane will have a tendency to yaw towards the left. And this yawing motion you stop by giving some right rudder. During this takeoff, because I was so at ease flying with taildraggers, I did this a bit too aggressively. So I pushed the nose down. Now I pushed the stick forward to push the nose down, but since I was so aggressive, this yawing motion was a bit more than I anticipated, so my normal correction with the right rudder was not enough. So the nose keeps on turning towards the left. I saw that I was losing control, so I give full right rudder, I give full right brake, I go with the throttle to idle. I saw the edge of the runway coming towards me, and by just sheer luck, I did not enter into a ground loop. I was just barely capable of holding the airplane under my control, and I was very lucky, because for the same price the airplane would just keep on moving towards the left, and then of course you're going to enter a ground loop. The other pilot, he was not as lucky. He wanted to do a 3-point landing, and a 3-point landing is when you fly just barely above the runway, and then you keep moving the stick back until your airplane goes into a stall, and then your airplane just falls literally out of the sky and onto the runway, and this is called a 3-point landing. I do not know if he is a good pilot, but I do know that he needs a bit more flight training, because the way he is flying with a taildragger, this is just not good enough. Now it starts with the speed. He is way too fast for a 3-point landing, because you have to stall the airplane, so you have to wait until you lose all your airspeed, and the whole time you have to hold your airplane 50 centimeters or so above the ground. This is not easy to do, because the whole time you have to be very precisely, because you have to hold the airplane at a very specific altitude above the ground, well, not altitude, a few centimeters above the ground, and when it is gusty, then it becomes even more difficult to do. But of course, when it is gusty, then I would prefer doing a wheeler landing. And a wheeler landing is where you fly your taildragger literally on the runway, and then you wait until you have dissipated all your airspeed, and then the tail comes down. This is a bit more easier because now you can touch down with a bit more airspeed, and then if you're flying a bit faster, it is easier to control your airplane. Now he is also way too high after the flare route. Now you see him descending a bit, but normally you would just do a go around and you would not try to fix this mistake. And then for some reason he starts to climb again. But if this happens, your first reaction should be to just give full power and do a go around. You cannot do this with a taildragger and get away with it. Now he keeps trying to land the airplane, and this is very difficult to control. So yeah, the moment that the wheels are going to touch the runway, he is not going to be perfectly straight, and it is very important when you are doing a 3-point landing, the moment that the airplane falls out of the sky, it needs to be straight. Because the moment that you are a bit crooked, your airplane will have a tendency to make it much worse. So you touch down a bit sideways and then your airplane will have a tendency to do this. And this is very difficult to control because you do not know how much rudder input you need to stop this from happening. Because if you give too little input, it's not going to be enough to stop this yawing motion from happening. If you give too much, well, you're just going to put your airplane into a ground loop yourself because you're forcing your airplane to turn. This is also a very strange moment. Normally the moment that the airplane touches down, you have the stick all the way back. And this is because you are doing a 3-point landing. So you are above the runway, you are moving the stick all the way back until the airplane goes into a stall. And then the airplane touches down, and then normally you would hold the stick all the way back to keep that tail from going back up. And also you have a bit more control because now you're pushing the tail wheel on the runway, and it is a movable tail wheel, also with this taildragger. Now of course if you have a movable tail wheel like this taildragger, then you have a bit more control over your airplane. But here the moment that he touches down, the elevator moves down. So this means he has to move the stick forward. But then of course the tail is going to move up, and I do not know how your airplane is going to react because this is absolutely not standard procedure to land with a taildragger. But this is an indication that he is losing control over his taildragger. It is also very strange that the moment that he touches down, he has some crosswind correction, because one wheel touches before the other one. But for some reason he lets go of this crosswind correction, so of course the airplane is going to turn into the wind. And that combined with a very bad landing, he is of course going to lose control and go into a ground loop. If you want a bit more control over flying with an airplane, you can visit my video flight training course on vintageaviators.net. Thank you for watching.